major session with Rajesh Dahiya, and I'm going to be hosting this. So MGD sessions, we've got quite a few interesting ones. The last one went on for 2 hours, which was Devika. We got Dahiya now. I've promised him I won't though he wants to talk a lot, I'm going to control him and keep interrupting him. Today is going to be a little bit of a ragging also. Dahiya, warned you. Next one, we also have Oni coming up next Tuesday. So I want to start off with Dahiya, and Dahiya is somebody who everybody knows about. We've all been following his work, and I think his story is very, very fascinating. We've seen his work. Grown up in a village, went to a sports school. From there, chanced upon NID and made friends with the wrong people like Pushi, Rajiv Gautam, but still made it. Went on and he's did some interesting courses. Went to Italy, and he's been doing cutting edge work over the years. He's been pushing himself and staying relevant. So he's somebody with his work never ages. And what's interesting with Dahiya is he makes the time to give back. You'll see him designing curriculums for different places, giving talks, going back to an idea and making that conscious effort to teach. Many of us talk about doing things, but Dahiya walks the talk. And he's also full on stud. He's the first person who wants to go on post on Facebook and give it back and troll some of the guys who recently have been putting up stuff about NID. So there's that all round stuff, start with a full passion for NID. So today is really about uncovering who this person is, what his story is, how he came about to who he is. And while doing so, we're going to ask him a bunch of questions. He's going to be sharing. If he's forgetting stuff, I'm going to keep reminding him. And after which we'll go to, at the end, slides, which he will recap with pictures of what we've shared. And then he's also going to be sharing a few projects which showcases what they do as code design. We also have added pressure of Mohor is watching him, and she's got a notebook and she's going to be giving scores to him. So recently there's been a podcast where Dahiya is supposed to speak for 10 minutes. He went on for 5 hours. So been warned on keeping him on a leash. So Dahiya, over to you. I'm going to start with my first question, where you've raised and you were born in a village outside of Delhi, and full exposure which you had in that place growing up, and you were shared about how you guys used to make your own toys, and there was also exposure to the to things like Lego. And so I just want to understand a little bit more about how it was growing up, and was there ever a thought of design, of creativity? Who were your early influences? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, I think a little bit of correction. So we were living in a small city, like my parents and my elder brother, but my father had to go for his masters again without telling his father. So there was a time when we temporarily shifted to village. I think that's now that that was the reason for us to temporarily shift. So I was born in my village because of that temporary shift. But post that, the exposure to village was, my father had certain beliefs that me and my brother should spend a vacation time in our village. I think it was that time when you, I don't know how the relationship between village and city is now, but earlier it was more like when a new dog comes into the street, he's first bashed up before he becomes part of the team. So all the village kids will always, look at you as a city boy, etc. And there was no sports equipment shops. There you had to make your own hockey stick or bat or ball, or all kinds of stuff that you could find from within the home. So that was at that point, honestly, it was neither interesting nor something to talk about. It was plain and simple painful, because you have to hammer out, thick wires, make wheels out of it, or cut used bathroom chappals and make wheels of your toys. So, but it was a constant pressure to look cool when you're in village, because those kids could bloody climb on trees like monkeys, and you don't want to come across as a city kid who just doesn't know all these things. So regularly that interaction was there twice a year. Uh, Early childhood inspirations, etc. Honestly, I grew up in an environment where there were no such things as who's your inspiration. Mostly, it was how do you sneak out, play some sports, come back home, how manage your homework somehow. Uh, my inspirations were Bollywood people. So, when your parents are sleeping in the afternoon, then you're acting like them, jumping from one charpai to another or from wall to another. So, Bachchan was my uh, favorite guy. But I don't know how many of you know it, but I even became fan of a guy called Naveen Nischal, man, for a couple of months. Like
Yeah,
nobody gave a damn to him. So, but there was a film. I used to see any possibility of watching a film, I will watch it.
was it Ijazat? Is
So,
it
sorry.
Ijazat?
No, some action thriller, only action. My thing with was like, if there is Mar Dhad in a film, I'm going to go. Otherwise, those films are not. There's nothing else for me.
Sure.
Like my childhood, I had very strange images in all the. So my photographs were only taken during weddings, and in NID, my photographs were taken during convocation. Nobody took a photograph of me. So I noticed once, like I will stand like this with an imaginary gun in my hand in all the wedding photographs. So I was so my inspiration, design and all is far away. I was just like cinema is in. So very yeah, no, I think the design part comes much later. Uh,
So did you know when you were a kid what you wanted to be? Did you have a thought there? Because you've shared, many of us know, if you see the poll, that you went to a sports school. What made you take that line? How come a sports school? How did that happen? What was that influence like?
Uh, well, it was one of the better schools in the state in Haryana. So my parents didn't want me or my brother to study locally in Rohtak. So both of us, he went a year before me, and then I followed. I started my boarding in class fourth. So sports in the school, I think in early 70s it was made for sports, but they did not find any traction with parents sending their kids, so it eventually became a school with great sports facilities,
Okay.
and sports was compulsory. So again, it was not a choice that when I was 10-year old, I honestly was not making life decisions. My parents, anyway, they had made sports part of me and my brother's life. And in Rohtak, honestly, sports was everyone's normal routine. There was there was nothing special that, oh, these two kids are going for school. Every day, 5:30, 6 o'clock, you are thrown out of your house. You need to go for a run, come back, figure out where you want to play. Come evening, again, you are chucked out. Go and figure out where you want to play, come back. Finish your homework. That's all is expected from you. So sports was normal. But sports school was interesting in the sense the scale of that place was crazy. Like you have to cycle around to go. You had
Okay.
it, I think if you were to sort of just cut across the breadth of the campus, it will be around 6-7 kilometers both ways. So we had all kinds of like full Olympic size stadium, not that much seating, but the size, Olympics size pool, some 6, 7 lawn tennis courts, 2 football fields. The abundance was crazy. Like our library building was bigger than most of the school blocks I've seen. So you can imagine my surprise when I went to NID and saw the library. I thought this is magazine section, but then I realized that's the whole library. So our magazine section was as big as NID's library.
Wow.
Our time library, not knowledge center or whatever it's called right now. So those were nice 6 to 7 years for me, because I hated every moment of it, because nobody wants to be woken up at 5:30 every day and run for 5 km or 10 kilometers. Winter shorts are not allowed for students till they are in class 10th. I have no clue what that what was the logic behind it.
They just
I
like hairy
think body
ladies.
hair. Yeah. But so it was that every day was just that. And these are 6 day a week schedules. But my respite was uh, everyone had to join a craft slash special interest group. So I joined art. So every Saturday was a relief, because our art teacher, so Gautam was my classmate then we were roommates all the way till fourth year. But the art program was quite good. We a huge art studio. We used to have keys to the store. We could work till late in the night. Uh, in retrospect, when I look back, I think there are a lot of things I learned. The school had its own wood workshop, so school made its own furniture for around 700 students and faculty. Uh, Students wove their own carpets for the offices. We made our own amphitheater together. And I could operate a lathe machine before I came to NID.
Wow. Okay.
The school had because it was not inside a city, so you had to be self-reliant. So there was a lot of working with your hands that one could. We had a photography lab. Uh, so to now look back, it was nice, but early on it was painful, because why are we making this furniture? And you're not really making a furniture, because your kaka is making furniture. So they sometimes just give you a measurement. You have to cut a rectangle of a plywood. That's what you're doing throughout the day. So, but I think overall it was a nice learning, and I think sports very directly, not indirectly, gave something before the school. This whole thing of participation is important and not winning. And last 10 years it is now coming back in all the modern schools. My kid goes to a school where participation is important. I understand what it means and why it's good. In sports school, participation is important. Is like you'll get a tight slap on your face if you don't come back after winning, because you get a year to practice. And that there was some other kind of also right logic, that you had all the time to practice to win. You don't go through all these facilities and then say I participated. And especially when you're competing with schools, poor guys, their football field becomes cricket field sometimes, that kind of a thing. Here you have a dedicated coach for everything, and that became that got ingrained in your life. But in mine, I think it was a secret rather than blatantly practicing it. That if you're doing something, you come back, because you'll be. My school, you got beaten up. So, till date, I am scared of faculty or police or security guards. So it's. I mean, I have the respect. I can get over it, but I think the school had its own positives and negatives about it. Very regimental, extremely regimental. Like if you have to wake up at 5:30, you have to wake up. There is no 5:31 in my school. And we had some British teachers. My God, they used to cane like hell. So now I understand when I watch the old British cinema of caning, the strictness of what a teacher is. That's some other level altogether.
That must have been Citizen Kane, you saw.
Sorry.
Bad word. So they had a quick note. So how did you and Rajiv hear about NID, or how did you decide to apply? I know it
So
didn't happen as a planned thing, or you didn't have a portfolio
yeah,
prepared
I
as
think
such.
it happened via rejection. So so my father was principal at this polytechnic. So he used to take us quite regularly to workshops. So I knew a lot about machines. They will be testing like strength of bricks and cement blocks. The one word that I often heard there, like I don't think I wanted to be a civil engineer. Mechanical engineer was also out. My brother's is a mechanical engineer, and I had gone through his books, and that reminded me of my class 11th and 12th. So that was also, but I often heard the word architect when I was roaming around those workshops. But I failed miserably in SPA entrance exam because they had questions about projectiles, etc. They needed to know position of a ball after 8 seconds and all. So it's just the rejection. And one senior from my school, so our we had a senior teacher, Miss Datta. Her daughter graduated from NID long back, and this another senior of mine who's a close friend now. He talked about NID, and he gave. I did not understand about this much, but he talked about Futura pressure cooker as an example. That it had recently come to market. And he
Yeah.
told me, look how this is designed, and this previous one, well, in his words, was not designed. Uh, and he gave me a few more examples, and I got very curious that I had absolutely no idea there is a place that does that. So when I joined NID, the only understanding I had was of product design to some extent. But by then the problem is NID's entrance exams happen in January and you have to apply in October. So that opportunity had gone. And me and Gautam were pretty much sitting in a bus, going to SPA hostel, talking to our school seniors, whatever we could know about NID together. So this is both of us together roaming around and finding about this place, uh, NID. So we both had to do nothing for 1 year. So we used to meet very often in Delhi because he is from Gurgaon, where I'm sitting right now. So both of us used to we tried to find anyone connected with NID because there were no books, but eventually we got through. But I also remember we also landed up in the same room of the entrance examination. Yeah, with
Yeah.
me and Gautam, it has been quite a uh, coincidence like that. I remember at the same time, after we opened the examination seat, we looked up at each other, and I exactly knew what he's saying, and I knew what I'm anyway saying to him without speaking. That fuck, we need to get into this place. The questions, just a question about, think of 5 uses of a used cycle tire tube and draw them.
Yeah, we
I
had
said,
the same thing
man,
for our year also. No?
this this is this is the place. We should get into this place simply because last 1 year and a year before that, we were sitting in, both of us were sitting in entrance examinations where we couldn't even figure out if this is a chemistry question or a physics question to get into engineering. So obviously there was no regret in not getting through those examinations, but this something told me, and I think there was MGD was in our hall, and I was late by 35 minutes in the examination hall, and he did not think much about it, and he said, we understand you're late. It's a long story. I had to actually run halfway to the thing because my cousin's scooter broke down. But I loved it because and everything reference was previous examinations I have appeared for, right? You can't come late by more than 5 minutes. And this guy was very welcoming. He was saying, we'll give you extra 30 minutes, sit down and this. That. So there was something about the way things were conducted, the quality of questions, which that's the first time I fell in love with the NID. Until date, I am. My peers sometimes hate that extra love that I still have for that place. But yeah, that's short form of it. So, and both of us were super excited about it. We were so excited that we actually bought swimming trunks because the brochure said situated on the banks of Sabarmati River. So, but when we saw it for the first time, there was wheat cultivation going on. It was bloody hot summer. So yeah, all our dreams were shattered, but I think it all turned out to be fine.
You could have voted for the freshers party.
My freshers party.
Actually, you could have won those shots for the freshers party.
Well, others took away every bit of
Yeah,
excitement. You could not top that excitement. So there was, even if you were naked, nobody will see you. Others did his job.
So you guys hung out together. I remember when you joined campus. I think there's a funny story where you came in and you had the whole list of, and you thought Manu was the topper in the class, right? And you guys were trying to be cool like Manu. So share that your first impression of NIT when you came in, the seniors, what that place, your initial years when you came in.
So we went couple of days before our interview dates to the campus. And Sadasivan was warden at that time, and he told us that you can only stay for 2 days. And, both of us were seasoned hostel chaps. And you never give more information. You said, of course, yeah, 2 days. And of course, we were staying for 5 or 6 days. So we managed that. So after we waited for the final result and we saw the list right outside director's office, and we saw our name. We were happy. We were super happy. But the top name was Manu Anand. And for me and Gautam, it was, when you come from Rohtak, Gurgaon, it's all about topper, who the topper is. So we said, oh shit, man, like we should find out who this guy is. And he was not around, So when we finally joined in the Audi orientation, everyone was introducing themselves, and me and Gautam are looking for this chap called Manu Anand, the topper of NID. And Manu gets up, he's wearing bathroom Hawaii chappals. And the coolness quotient went way beyond the ceiling also. Because we had only seen certain kind of seniors, looked like they had earned the right to wear slippers on the campus. And there was Manu Anand, first day, man, bathroom slippers. And Manu Anand introduced himself exactly, almost with the same confidence as Ashok Chatterjee did when faculty was introducing themselves. I said, that's our guy, man. That's our chap. And thank God, after a few months, I think Bala or Amitabh, somebody told us that it's actually an alphabetical list. So that's how Manu Anand was on top. So we were very naive, man. So, because Gautam was also a bit pissed off because my name was before him, D, and then G came later on, but he was not showing that much. So, but that is
tell us about NID, when you came in, because I remember Eeks, we used to be scared of ragging you also. The big guy, little keep 2 feet distance and rag the. How was your exposure, or were there any early influences from NID, and your whole experience in NID? I know that Ranjan played an important role, Mahindra Bhai. In fact, you were planning to take video first, right? And because Kushi took it, you stayed away, I guess. Good decision.
Kushi ditched me on that, but I think first year, because that I think for almost all of us here must have done the same thing. Ragging, I think people like me, Dhiraj, Gautam, so we had seen ragging where so this was like vacation, but one had to put up a face so that you don't look around, look like a fool, acting very cool about it. Managed to get along very well with Bala, um, uh, Pandey, Eeks. Uh, so it went sort of smoothly, but me and Gautam also knew tricks of avoiding ragging. So if we saw any senior with an empty bottle in his hand, we started offering to fill it with cold water. And you know that it's summer, man, so everyone will get that instinct कि तू पहले भर के तो आ बाद में देखेंगे, but then we never returned. So, so you know, a lot of tricks like that, but also played along with. But we also had Pratap, Pushi, Narayan Shi. So you know, the focus was never on us. And even if somebody looked at me, suddenly Narayan Shi will end up doing something so stupid that we will be like, bore away. But yeah, you're boring. Hato, you know, let's go to Narayan Shi. So, and then there was Pushi, who will be just looking at some balcony and praising long hair of this fictitious person on top. So uh, I think we had our ragging stars. So it was quite easy for us. And thankfully, within third, fourth day, sports, because everyone had just come back from vacation, including seniors, so sports started. That again saved me because Gary and Oni sort of said, "Beto side mein beto, chill." You know, so once you played with them, and I was sort of a very average sportsman in my school, but you come to a design school, you are above average. So that saved my life a lot. Like even Gotham played just to avoid ragging. So I think so. First year was that we made me and Gotham made a lot of mistakes in first year. So we hardly stepped out. We never slept before Calico Siren, which is Gotham's this cassette recorder playing Simon and Garfunkel and Calico Siren. You know, it's so it just takes you straight back to '92. So we I think the only participation we did beyond academia was making posters for Foundy. Or I used to only step out to make phone calls or buy a packet of milk. In my case, it was 3 packets of milk a day. But never ventured out. And me and Gautam from balcony, we used to keep looking out like, who are these guys, man? When dinner is over, they go out, they come back late in the evening. And I think it's slowly more interactions with seniors, you sort of mingle and step out a lot. The first year, I also decided to take up video. And so did Pushi. Pushi was a very close friend by then. So there's a short story about Pushi here. Me and Pushi, I think, did well in our first 2 years. In our times, we had 2 years of foundation, and both of us were so looking forward to become filmmakers. But when the results came out, both me and Pushi, our name was not there in video, man, and that was it was Saturday, and but the batch knew that both of us wanted video, and we all went. I don't know why all of us went to one landline and called up Mahendra Patel, who was head of department, if that he needs to come down. And he kept asking, for what should I do? And he said, no, you please come. And I think because he loved Lisa, so or whoever was on the convincing call, he came. Like, you ask Mahendra. So he came, but the problem is the sorrow and grief had taken over, and we started drinking. And I had my own capacity, and she had obviously own capacity. And cut to next day, both were smelling as if they were soaked in old monk. And you know, the cabin is a small place for 10, 12 people to fit in. And my Patel is super angry because why has he been called here? So, and we started off with they did not get video, and Mahendra Patel goes by the book, and what can I do? Video department, and little bit of booze was still there. We were very, a lot of courage in us for the time being. So, what I told him, he said, "You out of that end of becoming famous Rajesh Pandey kind of a character."
But no, he also said when Dahiya started talking about, he said, "Okay, forget about me. This guy deserves video." MCP said, "You talk about yourself."
MCP gave a very strange option. MCP said, "You talk about yourself, but go out of cabin." So I had to leave. But before leaving, the Bachchan in me came, childhood Bachchan. ये बच्चा था इसको in the reports, I know why now I remember why he chucked me out, because I made a very stupid remark. I told him, have you guys given video to some people just because they can't do anything else? So or did they serve bhajia, or did they serve bhajia to the editing room people? And MCP asked me to get lost. He said, "Fuck off, bhago idhar." So, but anyway, no regrets. At least one was thing.
You can always borrow from him, man.
Yeah, I'm heavily relying on this favor.
Sajid, if it's about money and ID, and Dahiya had already started working at Itu Chaudhary Design, and it is barely a few months after I go and meet him in Delhi. He already had a Maruti 800. He had bought it. He's talking money, and we stopped at a petrol pump, and he filled petrol worth 500 rupees. So I remember asking him this question. He said, "Dahiya, 500 rupees ka petrol?" So he gave a very good answer. I still remember it. खुशी पैसे के साथ बात यह कि जिसके होते हैं उसके पास चले जाते।
So I think first year and second year mostly when then came design. Slowly, one thing I could not get over since first day, Neelam, Ranjan, Manu, Sam, all guys, Balram, Dhima, the sincerity, conviction with which they were teaching. I don't know about if everyone had already gone through the standard. I had not. They were there for you. They won't start looking at their watches at 6 o'clock. For me, it was like, who are these people? Like they will find answers for you. And people like Ranjan pushed you, man. They like for he literally took me under his wings. He made me change my design process thing till he made it very complex. And I still remember summers cycling near airport. Some bank had started using computers. I think that was his secret mission. Something to do with computers or Apple or craft, something that you are not comfortable with. He just push you there. And that relationship actually continued till we lost him. He used to come to studio, supported all through that. We'll come to that later. But I think all this set of people and the seniors, you could go to anyone. Like I still remember during ragging up, a senior just taught me how to sharpen a pencil, man. And or I was sitting and drawing in my third year, and this guy Pawan is having chai. He did not talk to me. He just took my sketchbook. On the left, I was drawing a tree, and on the right, he drew his tree, and he did not say anything. He just walked out. And then I realized my tree didn't even look like a tree, man. If that was a drawing, mine definitely doesn't qualify as anything. And I had hardly spoken with him, but he sat. It took him 15 minutes. He, had another chai, just made the drawing, gave me back the sketchbook, and left. And I don't think, and I've spoken with Arijit and Amar and all these guys, there's one common thing. You do not have that kind of seniors in any other institute.
True.
People coming from various backgrounds, you sit and they help you out. Uh, the like you sit with Murli, Eeks, all these people, there is help, but you also become part of an experiment. Vedi came in much later, so ragging had to happen again. Suhail came in later, ragging had to happen again. We participated, everyone participated in it. And I still remember Vedi opens these two plastic pouches. And this was Mallu room, okay? Like Charlie and all these guys are sitting. And that was the first time I was scared of ragging, even though ragging was over. These guys are very cool. Banao, drinks, banao. And transparent liquid plastic glass. And I hadn't had much of booze before joining NID. It's this Pushy's company, man, just did it for me. But where he's making drinks, and I was like, this is a great place. Seniors, man. He was in 11th year or God knows what year. He's about to rag me, but before that, look at the hospitality. So I had it, man. It was so bad, but I kept a straight face. He made me have another one, and then I said, "Why aren't you guys having it?" Yeah, no, we are waiting. After 5 minutes, Vedi says, "Can you see properly?" I said, "Yeah." Okay, ja, bhag. They were testing, man, whether the booze was fine or not on me. So if I had gone blind, they wouldn't have finished off that. So they just waited for this fresher, take two, and done. Now you can go. So I came out sketching. I thought, okay, maybe that's part of the NID. But I think as a community, I till date I can't get over the support system. Today I can call most of you guys here, for something, and I know that you guys will be supporting or helping me in any way. So that was big, the influence. And then we were very lucky to have guys like David Shore come in. So I think overall, yeah, I've never enjoyed any education, for any form, the way I did from 92 to 98.
So, if I may just interrupt,
Yeah.
I know that you went ahead and did another program or a course in Italy. So I want to understand what made you think that or where did you find a gap? Why did you go for that program? I know that you spoke about the kind of exposure which you got there, the campus which was there, where they sent you in different parts of the world for craft dogs. So just want to understand what that exposure was and how that's helped you in your journey.
Yeah. So that was mostly Ranjan. He knew I wanted to do masters, but just during my pre-dep, my father sort of fell ill, so I had to leave. And very soon he passed away. So that whole dream of doing masters, I had postponed and kept aside. I worked at Itu Chaudhary Design for a couple of years. Then I went to Bangalore, worked in Infosys, came back to Bombay. I was working in human factors where I spent a lot of time with Pushi and Channi again. Uh, it was that time Ranjan mailed me about this new institute. So meanwhile, what had happened is at that time in ICD, we used to mostly design for identities and work for print. I shifted to Bangalore. Pillai had joined another batchmate, had joined the .com, and he invited me over. So we started working in tech side of design. Then Infosys happened, and then I was doing usability in human factors. So I had already shifted, but Ranjan was in touch. He always wanted to know what I have been doing. And he said, there's this new institute, and what you are doing is what everyone is doing. What you need to do is learn it formally. And I know the founders, this, that. And of course, in the attachment, Ranjan is not really telling you. He has convinced because he has already sent a recommendation letter and he had sent the application form in the mail attachment. So he was not just, he had prepared the whole next 2 years. So that's how it happened. It was a portfolio-based admission and interview. I got through. The program was, interaction design had recently been coined as a term where you were seeking the intersection of design, culture, and technology. Wherein in traditional design, there were only two circles, which is the culture and uh, design overlapped with only culture. That's what you seeked out. Everything else was all about production. This one, technology was a must, and I wanted to do that simply because things around us were changing. And the kind of education we had in 90s, we were mostly working on, we learned mostly on the traditional media. So I thought maybe it's a good time aid myself to that. So this was a very small town in north of Italy. Uh, I was already fascinated with the way NID was, and I think they upped the game. Again, very open environment. You could pick your own mentors, pick your own topics. If you come up with topics for poor people, girl, child, this, that, they will ask you to go easy. Don't be full of guilt. Make new things. Just equip yourself. So very exploratory. Don't have to design on screen. So it was mostly pushing tangible interaction. So there was a little bit of product design involved. I still remember we had to fill a form last day, last day as in last day of going from India. And they said, which operating system do you work on? So I said, okay, Apple Macintosh. So I thought they want to know me better because the other questions were all about that, siblings, this, that. When we reached, we got an apartment for ourselves with free laundry and change, but also got a MacBook Pro, a digital camera, and they felt that just to make everyone equal, because people from around 18 countries had come in. We were the founding batch. They did not want any student to suffer just because they did not have equipment. So it was wonderful years, like a lot of opening up. I think NID drilled this user-centric approach as well as meaningful content. Like NID was very particular about, this content is not even worth thinking about. It's not deep enough. Here, we were asked to think about scenarios. You said all of you are graduates, and the condition anyway was that you should have worked for 2.5 years. They wanted experienced people. In fact, we had people who were 37-year-old who had come in with 10 years experience. People who had sold companies had come in. We had architects, coders, product designers, graphic designers, filmmakers, a mix of those. People who already had like luxury cars, man, were students because they sold their company. So it was really nice for them to, to sit together and do. But I think the openness came from that every project, you have to explore a new thing, nothing from the past you need to worry about. So I think 2 years of that really opened you up, because one thing I realized that we should do this every 5 years. We start forming such strong opinions and it gets so layered that you think that's the default, and 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 I, and and you become very confident about that field, and you don't realize the world has moved on. And that's one thing I've noticed after I came back, and even now, and it applies mostly to senior alumni. They become so bitter about life, angry and bitter, and for me, I think. I mean, NID was common thing, but I will interest two things that happened. One is Ivrea, but also we can come back to that, of this having much younger colleagues always with you. But Ivrea played an important role, that if you could think of a subject for a project, they will put all the support there is to things. So I don't have to worry about who will code for this. They had state-of-the-art coders who will do things for you. So it was a nice way that you're not being checked for your guilt, or are you solving some crazy existing problem for the world. It just had to be future-facing, and I think that switch was flipped there.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was a great contribution, and it was free, as well as actually it was a paid holiday. I traveled to 7-8 countries. They made me travel there.
It's crazy the impact that, if you look at it, which Ranjan has had in everybody's lives, that push which comes in from there. So I just want to understand, before getting into work on co-design, that I know that there's a lot of passion besides work which you put into teaching, creating curriculums, Unbox, the book which you did, Deco. So I just want to understand, and I think I want to link it to a statement which you said. I think it's a very key thing about cynicism, of, where you get to a point where you tend to feel lack of relevance or get defensive because of that. And what I've seen with you is there's always a reset button which tends to happen. Like you said, you get it from your team, it's from teaching, it's interacting through festivals, and you also go representing India in many places. You've been to Amsterdam, you've spoken at Curious, of course. So I've seen there's a certain sense of relevance which you always find. So I want to hear a little bit about your side of you outside of co-design, and why do you do what you do? How does that help you stay the way you are?
So I think the formation of studio, Unbox and Deco will cover when we come to slides, but the reason for those I'll cover. Early on, I was very fortunate to have these 4-5 colleagues in the studio. It so happened most of them were also my students, because I started teaching in final year. So I took Kriti's class, a composition class, because SM believed in sort of experiments. He threw me in class, even though I had not convocated as a co-teacher, but then I only saw him for the first half an hour of Monday. So I was the co-teacher, and I had around 34 students. I was amazed at what happened as an output, but I was always in touch with that batch of students, the next batch I taught, and collectively my first set of colleagues were, I think, yeah, all of them were students at certain point. So I think they did not hesitate when at 9, if I said, let's start doing that, nobody said, but it's 9 o'clock in the night. Uh, but they were also trained by NID, and definitely my classes in NID go all the way till 2, 3 a.m. every day. But they also were those people who also were so passionate about cracking things. I'm just going back just a little bit simply because that was that gave me confidence in throwing stupid ideas on the table of publishing a book, knowing that these guys will lap it up, because alone you can't do anything. We were mostly doing graphic design and interactive projects, but uh, the early team was Dev Kabir, Mayank, uh, Mohor. There was a guy from NIFT who used to code. Who else was I hate forgetting names. Bikram Mitra. And then slowly, like Mickey, Bardava, Nikhil, all these guys came in. They all were so dedicated to projects. And then Mohar started full time. So she was working on some projects when she was doing DIP. And when she came on full board, so our focus became, because she was very good with editorial design and content. And then, that's how the content changed. The point I'm making is that slowly, as and when people came together, the sum total strength gave me strength to do that. Unbox happened simply because we also collaborated with another studio. Even they were mad in the same way. So I don't think when Unbox was even a collective idea, it was not really our idea. But Dekho, you can go back to your studio. I had come back from Europe, and that's when I put on table. But I could put it on table simply because I knew that all these guys will do it. And I don't have to worry about that you have to do clients' projects, because writing a book, collecting stories, publishing it, we didn't know that it will take 2.5, 3 years to get a book just this thick. More on the book I will speak because it's there in the slides, but it was again, Ranjan came back simply because I was showing him, he features in the book, I showed him the book, and I told him that a very well-known publisher in and the cover, because Dekho is written in 9 point. And he said, no, don't go in there because Mohar had already edited the book. So, what will this new chap do? It's either goes to print or you publish it. And Ranjan, under the big neem tree near main gate, he had this thing about him, man. He will make you take decisions you will never do, otherwise. And he's, iPad comes in, he shows me a number of books being self-published, puts his hand on my shoulders. This is the time to self-publish. And then, your eyes are going round and round. So it's like, okay, man, convinced, yes. And then you suddenly realize, wait a second, I will have to bloody pay for all this printing myself. But by then he has sold it, and you owe that much to him. And that's I like this blind love. If you go back, talk to some knowledgeable people, they will dissect it out and they will kill Ranjan's plan. They will give me 5 examples of where it did not work. Ranjan always talked about where things worked. And this is a time when we did not have much money, man, because you're paying salaries and things like that. And we still managed to pay for the book. We printed 1,500 copies, but wouldn't have done that if that man had not spent 5 minutes opening his iPad and running you through that. The book wouldn't have happened. I can't start a new studio today and tell somebody we'll make a book and they'll say, okay, how much will we be paid for that? My guys never bothered to ask that question. Honestly, even I could not think of it because it was like a tight, super tight family. So everything happened because of this bunch of 5, 6 people, which later became 8 people, etc. Because like in a family, I don't have to say, I'm going out, can you look after my dog? No, it's a family dog, man. You better look after it. That's how a studio operates. We don't have to think what will they say or what will they think. And I genuinely believe they are not doing it because they're employees. So all these things happened, and that man was there pushing, unbox man. He pushed, and whatever help he could do that, he did that. What was the question?
Yeah, just asking about why, basically about how do you constantly stay relevant and what you pick up from teaching, from doing this in terms of replenishing and keeping your skills relevant always.
I
You
think
touched
not
upon
being
the
very
changes in the
serious.
mindset.
I think not being very serious about this planning and long term, or uh, putting things on Excel sheet first, because moment you do that, it will show minus. Then that will say don't print book, because nobody has sold 1,500 books and made money. You have to go above 5,000 to actually make some kind of money, which will not make you money that will cover salaries of 2.5 people for 2.5 years. Oh, nahi hoga. So we knew it's not for money. We did not feature our work in it. In fact, it featured other studios' work. But you just do it. No, and you do it because you were so surrounded with people who did stupid things like these. He made so many books. He wrote so many papers. Look at all the faculty. They used to just do things. So you are anyway conditioned to not think like that. You have an idea, let's do it, then lose a lot of money, then take another year or two recover, come up with a bad idea once more, and do a festival. And currently, again, we are again in the. It's on a pause. I'll talk about that project. There's another one we've done it. So I don't. I think we couldn't have done it if we were looking at what, whether it will be loss making or profit making or what will happen. But I think simply it was, we actually loved doing it. It eventually turned out quite well. When sometimes when we really wanted to work on a magazine project, and they said, this is for Asian Paints, and they said, have you done a publication before? And this is in Bombay, right? So it was so nice, man. That was again Bollywood style. I pulled out Dekho. I said, not design, written, published, edited, sub KLI. So we also got, after 6 months, writing as our scope for that magazine. So it just turns out. So if either you keep waiting to get some projects, or you tell people we can do it. That book made us get a lot of people, 2, 3 people, well-known artists, asked us to do books because they had seen Dekho. So I think the money comes back. Earning money, I now firmly believe, is the easiest part. It's so easy. It's just that if you take the wrong direction, then you will also end up doing shitty work. But so I think with that comfort, uh, one can take more foolish decisions. The money is easy. I think it's just the kind of straight face you need to keep when you invoice a client.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to some questions at the end to sum up. If you can do share screen and take us through the story visually.
Okay, sir.
Kushi, you can smile also. Don't look scared.
Kushi, I have naked pictures of you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, share that. To do it, I'm having.
Kushi wrote some stuff on the blackboard so it looked relevant and on the back, just to look like he's organized. It just says ooh la la, repeat till fade out. Just copy paste. Yeah, they started share screen.
So I'm going to skip some of the part that we have already discussed. Uh, when I went to Ivrea, that's one thing I noticed and learned this from Americans. I'm talking about 2001. When everyone was supposed to make a presentation, I made mine. It was mostly work, 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 and over. But Americans reached work only when 90% of their childhood photographs were taken care of. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then working with younger people, etc., but also NID, almost everyone had images. So I also tried to look for my childhood images. So I have two main photographs from my childhood. One is this, and the other is this. And it's also printed on the same bloody thing. It's one frame. There is no other photograph, man, that I have. So, and once in a while in some Mausy's shadi or something in one corner. Now you can't count that as a photograph. That was not a conscious decision of let's get our kid photographed. This is the only conscious effort that my parents put in, and they think that they can pass it on as two photographs and not one. So that's all I could find, man, and that's the only record I have of my of my childhood. Once in a while, me and my brother used to fight when we were kids. Ye mera photo hai, and he'll say, "Nahi, ye mera hai." Because both of us were so short on maybe twice or thrice. So that's how I end my childhood. It's as brief as that. I was born here near Delhi. We've done this one was the influential part. This is the part I was talking about, Sid, of wherein the things that amaze me is that as 6, 7-year-old, you could make these things, at least especially the left-hand side things, just with house tools, with those Lego. This is another thing of, I have heard this from Pushi, I've heard this from Sonal Dabral, and many of his lectures. Your design learning actually without nobody knowing started long back. When you could, for me, I think when now I see kids learning cycling, I am amazed. They have, we learned cycling because we had to go and buy veggies, man. Or you continue to walk. So, one hand on handle, the other is holding a bag. And you cycle and figure out, talk to veggie shops, you figure out the fresh veggies are underneath. Those life lessons that your mother sends you, and you better do it right, because she will send you back again, another 2-3 kilometers. Or, all kinds of interactions you've had with your kid as a kid. This is what, when we did environmental perception, or in my batch, we didn't even do that, but we used to go out and sketching. I think that's or the kind of humor you start getting into. This sum total was literally the post-school hours of, I think once you are 7, 8-year-old, you're an active household member doing things. And this is where you learn different dialects. The carpenter will tell you about the grain of the wood. And then you realize that after almost 15 years, Pradyumna is also then again talking about grain of the wood, and Hari Kaka is talking about the same thing. But you actually learned this long back. So for me, the first year of NID was also thrilling because can't recall the name of the leather guy, Kutti, I think. So I could do a lot of these, the chisel-like thing you have. Also, my school had these workshops. So I was so thrilled that for the first time, those top 10 of our class who all went to IITs, they always knew all the answers. So first year, I was also a student amongst 27 who knew some answers. Felt so nice. And that, that little boost of confidence that you get, that you can smell wood and say whether it's a teak or it's shisham, that kind of a thing. So you're like almost a villager let loose in a sophisticated area. And that part we've covered of the sports school, coming to NID, doing this crazy thing of at one class you're touching Sinar, but you're also I don't know how many of us, you were part of the magazine, the left hand side Mac is where we did that magazine, man. Gulati was part of that, I go. But we used to switch it on and then go to Lalu and have chai and come back, and the guy would have switched on by then. So this whole thing of jumping from one to another, electives go to late making, I think that was really nice. And some of the work that you did, the guy in the center, a hypothetical project, became a big influence, like that guy in Mahabharat, for the distant learning guy, for when he finally asked for his thumb, Eklavya's teacher.
Eklavya.
Yeah. So Weingart was like that. But after many years, he actually caught up with me when he was in India, and I spent a day with him. So we'll get back to that. That was Ivrea. After I came back, so I did this teaching thing that you're talking about. So, Aditi threw me, invited me, and literally threw me actually in to teach textile students, which is the bottom right thing. Or a lot of graphic design. Top left is Kriti's class, foundation class. So started teaching in 98, early on. So it was a mix of, I did not get enough slides, so I taught a lot in interaction design in Gandhinagar, and but I prefer foundation classes. But also got this dream of every time we presented as a batch after teaching goes over, I got to make posters of announcement. And this used to put a lot of pressure on the students, because I used to go and put up the poster which had the date and timing of the show, because that was the requirement, that you have to present your work to the community. So and because you're a visiting faculty, you can't really go back and finish everyone's work. So that made sure that we finished everything on time. So every time we will book an aquarium or the foyer where we will put the output. So I haven't been doing this regularly these days, but I hope to return soon. So co-design happened because a client happened before. So there is a little bit of story. I will, because of time, I will move pretty quickly. It happened because there was no plan. I was in NID doing NID's brochures, etc. And Levi's through Choxy's office contacted us for a project, retail project. But they won't work with an individual. They said we work only with companies. But there was no studio. So I remember I was in Pragati Press getting a brochure printed for NID, and I get a call from unknown number. That was Amardeep Bahel. Had met him once in 95. That is 2000. This is 2004. So 9 years back, I had met Amardeep Bahel. It was Amardeep Bahel who said, "Oh, yeah, kaisa hai?" The familiar sound, because we've heard his lectures. And he said, "I heard you're looking for office space." He came to know, I think Gautam used to work there. Cut it short, he actually offered that I will give you a studio space. And I said, you know what, that's not enough. I don't have computers. He said, he will give that. I don't have furniture. I will give that. I don't have internet. I will give you that. All the answers. That's how a lot of alumni supported the beginning. So we had an office from day one. And this client was Levi's. They were supposed to come from Bangalore. But even if you have an office, you don't have designers. So I used to play I used to play basketball in the evening with Dev Kabir, Mayank, and all these guys. And I told him, you know what, there's a query, it's Levi's. Let's do work on this project, but we have to start a studio. And everyone, post game this, yeah, good idea. That's how designers came. So it's a total khosla ka ghosla going on the parallelly. The studio space happened, designers happened, computers were already placed there. And I remember we had some buffer time, but we were so particular about how to set up this office of ours. We went to Ahmedabad to buy mushroom fabric for the curtains. Like completely all warped priorities, before the client comes in. Remember, I don't know who made those. Was it Nayak or Dashrath Patel's mugs? The one with the slight depression to hold the mug, red, yellow, blue. I had kept those, thinking one day, I will use those. Those came in. I had got a bottle of wine, got those, ordered pizza when this client came. He was super impressed with the studio of ours, which got formed literally overnight. But the Khosla Ka Ghosla went on till date, and all these people who post basketball games said, let's work on this project. They worked for 3-4 years till they started their own studio or went for their masters. It went on till now. I am actually now part of that studio. That's how the studio started. So we used to do a lot of interactive work before that. This was the project. I always like showing it, especially in these kind of interactions. This was a wall given to us where they asked us to do 16 or some of those 16 or 15 panels of history of Levi's for their heritage store, where they're recreating all their heritage garments and selling them. Very premium outlet. The second basement of that hotel on Old Airport Road in Bangalore.
Leela Hotel.
Leela, yeah. So we actually converted this in the same budget of making 15 panels into an interactive display system. You will get to see this right here. There's a shot, the quality is bad. This was shot on a cheap digital camera. But I'll just take you what you have on the background, a lot of imagery that collected and a lot of artifacts to help people understand what they were doing. We also broke down the history into, what you see on the top red are every decade keywords from world history. Main part of the project was this, I'm just going to skip, guys. Yeah, what this, and up, through this, put it in a wooden case, put a touch screen from 3M on top, and made an interface like a scrapbook, because who else is going to collect so much trivia about Levi? See a fan who's keeping a scrapbook. Left side are the images, right side, whatever you click on the left side, right side shows you the detail. And when you move, the content changes according to the decade you're in front of. So this was our first project, this is when I realized that the team can 25,000 rupees each for working for 5-6 months. The total budget was 1,25,000, which was the budget to do 5 posters, 15 panels, sorry. But we convinced them to buy hardware, but rest of collecting information, coding, all that went into that. So from day one, I think the idea was how to go back to the client with the different solution. And it's always been a dear project to be. So these are the details of the project, the electronics on top. Well, very grounded NID way of planning on which one of the planning phase there, this eventually became the that you saw earlier. I'm going to skip some of this. Sajid, any particular project that you have in mind?
I wanted to show the Royal Enfield, how it came about and how we took it to another level from the branding perspective.
Cool. Okay. So, just a quick, just so, I think post interaction design and doing a lot of UI, UX, a lot of print work. Parallelly, Mohor was developing her skills of, read about saying what happens before visual identity program. We slowly started inching towards smaller identity projects. There's a glimpse of that. So small layer, bigger, medium size. We started working on that. But we were not averse to now not picking up publication design. But most of what it so happened that almost 80% of the project. So this is just a glimpse of my kind of work, or I'm happy that it's no particular style as such. So with all this in the background, it was 2012, I think. We got a query that Royal Enfield wants to meet. In fact, it was a pressure motors has sent a query they want to meet.
Dahiya, just one pause. If you can share the story of you and Sandeep Pillai having a drink in Bangalore and put it back to this.
Before this.
Wherever you
yeah. So, I mean, because Sandeep Pillai said it, it must be true because I have no recollection. So we had we were flatmates in Bangalore. In my dream, I had thought my team will be working on Royal Enfield's identity. But after I finished it, I met Pillai. He had come for Unbox Festival. And he told me that in Bangalore in year 2000, I had bought a Royal Enfield bike classic. And me and Pillai used to just weekends roam around on it. Once we went to a couple of pubs and had overdone our beers. And he told me that after I parked bike under the building, I sat down the floor and pointed at the tank and told him that, Pillai, I want to design this logo one day. This was 2000. So I think there is credibility in the story because it's Sandeep Pillai saying it. So that was quite something. And I didn't know when I was working on Royal Enfield. Pillai told me this after I met him, after I finished Royal Enfield project. It was very nice, this whole connection of things visiting you all after a decade, Ranjan visiting you after decades. So this was just a simple query. We thought they want us to do something for an exhibition or something else. I'm going to skip this. Yeah, so it hit us after the first meeting that we have been called to design identity for Royal Enfield motorcycles. And it's not come to us. The meetings are happening. There are multiple studios they are meeting. We are one of them. At that point, we had 4 Royal Enfield users out of 8 people, or maybe one more, I think. We could not believe that honestly, it was not that I could not believe that we got the project. We could not even believe we are part of the pitch. It was that kind of a brand for us. I think one huge difference of why we got it probably is, I think we turned out to be the hungriest amongst other big studios that were called. We were definitely the smallest studio with, I don't think we had that kind of an identity work done beforehand. These interviews, meetings to studios happened over 4 months. So that's the kind of exercise you were getting into. 4 months, Royal Enfield owner, Siddharth Lal, we was personally meeting all the studios over 3 to 4 months, multiple meetings to make a selection of the studio. So you knew something is going right, if that's the kind of time they're spending on. Well, we had 3 meetings in which we pretty much showed everything. And I know me and Mohar used to spend so much time preparing. There was no presentation. They just wanted to meet. But we will organize work so thoroughly every time we used to go to their office that you want to come across as slick, as experienced as others. We were pulling out work that we had not shown in our portfolio. We were putting it out and eager, taking notes. Sometimes our meetings used to be 1 hour because we used to show so much work and like tire the hell out of them. Last meeting, I did not take any work because I was like, something is awful, man. 3 times I have shown everything, but it so happened he also wanted to only talk and not show work. So we talked for half an hour. He wanted to know where I went for schooling. Exactly this kind of conversation we are having. A client, the owner of a bloody large organization, wants to know about you. And he's playing along. He's not a one-way interview. And I think that went well, but I remember saying this, although this walking out of the room with a dialogue has never worked in my favor, knowing Pushi's and videos example, but I thought, one never learns. So I again put my cards on the table when I was leaving. I said, you know what, Siddharth, I know you're talking to many studios, but without knowing their name, I can guarantee you that we have maximum number of Royal Enfield bikers in the studio. And, then Bachchan leaves. So, but it was a true statement. If they had come to the studio, those bikes were there. We had bikes from 1985 to my model and the new bikes. And there were 4 or 5 of us who had bikes. Mine had gone to Kullu long back, but I counted myself in. So it's not cheating. I had a bike on my name. So that's how, after a couple of weeks, I got a call and I was told the project is on. I think there was a minute of joy, but after that, when your stomach churns, gives you a warning that find the nearest washroom. It's that feeling for so long after that, my God, you wanted something so badly, it has landed. Now, how do I do this? And we had seen the insights, interviews, talk to people, the kind of love people had for this brand was unheard of. Like, not many brands in India could with pride say this kind of thing. Like, if cops love you, man. If you don't have papers, cops will let you go because you're on a Royal Enfield. So, imagine the kind of pressure you have is, how do you make an identity for this? You want to nudge people and you say, yaar, aapki motorcycle आपको क्यों पसंद है, ये इतनी धीरे चलती है. And that guy comes back to you instantly. He's not waiting. He said, धीरे नहीं चलती है, आराम से चलती है. So, and that's when you realize this is what the definitions and the positioning of the logo. They eventually gave us that this is the input that was given to co-design. that what is it about this brand? It's not motorcycles at all. It's motorcycling that Royal Enfield is about, because that's one of the brands that enabled motorcycling. There are enough motorcycles around, and the kind of passion that it's. So there's a lot of this unseen work that goes before you start making logos. You know, you sit, you dissect these pillars of the brand, then you do the cues, but then you come to one of these things which took forever to make. Uh, I think after they finalized it, there was close to somewhere between 135 to 140 drawings were done of fine tuning it. That's another thing where in the studio, uh, I I don't have to think twice before telling somebody make 135th drawing of this, please. Nobody rolls their eyes. Sometimes they may not know what will that do, but when they do it, it happens. I think it's I think I carried a portion of my batch and made a studio. I treated them like you know students, and that's why I think it's a fruitful partnership of 8 to 10 people, where when you ask them to do something at any given time or any day of the year, they never I never see that expression on their face. First 10th drawing, 20th drawing is fine, man. 139th drawing of this logo post approval. This one especially, because there was this fear that after 10 years, 20 years, if I am on a traffic light and this bike stops next to me, at that point, I don't want to sort of find a mistake. It just, it's that effect that you want for every work that you do, that, you know, put in every bloody minute you have, because once it goes in production, there is no going back. Yes, it can be perfected, but at least you can say you tried. So for us, Royal Enfield was this quest where this is only one part of that. You know, when you're doing an identity program, you are actually seeking out something that is not logo, but something else that the brand owns. What is that continuous thing? And you know, that man, when we started the project, he had more films on YouTube than Siddharth Lal. Crazy guy. That this guy has started painting again, but he was like literally interning with him when we made this video. It's today one of the most modern two-wheeler factories, but he is part of the assembly line. They did not let him go. Craftsmanship was one of the brand characteristics, and these are the proofs that you have of it. This guy can talk to you because he got filmed so many times and he's part of an assembly line. He can now give his interview and still paint without looking at the tank, and then do the same thing with his left hand. So we thought, you know, this is the right sort of asset that we can build through this thick and thin stride. This man became one of the most important assets of the brand itself. So you'll see that a lot of places and very big size in facade. At least when your logo is covered by a neem tree, etc., at least there's some familiarity with the bar going across from left to right. Or all the way, one day when you're cleaning your speedometer, you will realize there is a stripe there, hiding it. Who cares whether people see it or they don't see it? How do you frame an image? Maybe you'll discover that one day, but you know, slowly owning it without having this sole consistent thing. The other thing that we liked about the brand and the client's requisite was, please do not make us make a McDonald out of us, that everything has to be one color, everything has to be one font. We have different bikes, we have newer bikes coming in, and we have 100 years old bikes. We have our own assets. which we want you to preserve. So these are two very old assets. They looked very different, but we redrew them. Left side is all the rides, and many rides we did for them. None of them have to follow a particular way of looking. It's, you will once in a while to find 2-3 things common. Pay respect to where the ride is going and where it's happening. Do not plaster yourself all there. So a tour of Tibet will learn from something from Tibet, or Tour de Colombia loves from the basket weaving tradition, or the tour of Bhutan talks about the iconic monastery. Stuff like that. If you look at, this is the only brand where the vintage is more colorful than the main brand. So they have a new brand where they repurpose the brand. This part of the project is interesting because this client did not ask, and I want to talk about that when you work with a client long term, in this case, we've been working with them forever. A time comes when you start spending time on their behalf and propose projects to them. This is one of those projects where, you know, they still have old 1960s art. They did not do image making. The way Volkswagen Beetle had this iconic image, a point of view, a typical camera shot, the front view they had, it became iconic. There was no image making done for bikes. And we offered this exercise to them that for all the models available, we are just going to do a large image or set of images for you, and then your apparel team or your advertising team can use it anywhere. They agreed. Whatever we had proposed in terms of timeline and money, they agreed to that also. This was a good 6 to 7 or longer year projects, but only to output a set of illustrations, nothing else. To bring in live the bike, that this was GT, this was classic, to be almost like the way this bike is, that you have to just make it look like a portrait, a beautifully shot portrait. Or Royal Enfield Bullet is a homage to, you know, the number of years that it, and if you closely look at this illustration, you will discover instances of history that it has. Or Himalayan, the new bike, where when you closely look, these are all this is hand done. When you closely look at, you will realize half the mountains are actually the bike itself. Because this bike was also positioned as how you become one with nature and don't go and sort of overpower it or dominate it. Or the cruiser that can go long distance from very Asheric day to night kind of effect. I think the craftsmanship sort of, this is another process of one more last one for Royal Enfield, where how much you can contribute or how much they are ready to. We had done a lot of work for retail, but this new retail, which was a huge experience center for Goa, we did not follow the known visual language, but respected or rather studied what the Azulejo, the Portuguese art form of Goa. And instead of going and putting our art there, borrowed from there. This is a very quick sort of process of what does it take to do a mural. A lot of other stuff was done for the experience center. This is us doing a track shot, standing on a shopping cart in the office. You know, somebody is pushing the shopping cart in the of a relationship with the client, I think then the design becomes a two-way process. They're very open to listening to you. We are very open to listen to them or any other client. So just we are at 4:40. We can carry on or end it, or is there any other
Yeah,
part
so
that
what I
you?
want to ask Daya is that your work people can see online and see
Yeah,
most other items. You
sure,
share
sure.
one of them. So just wanted to ask you two, three more questions and pick up a few things people have reacted to also, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
So quick, Uday, if you can stop share screen, and what we can do is once we're done, we can even continue some of those things. One key thing I wanted to ask there, because when I interact with you and I hear your stories, and also when you're sharing work, and over the years, whenever we've spoken, there are two things which I see distinctly different from a lot of earlier people have spoken. So you hear a lot of designers speak about clients as somebody else, they speak about industry as somebody else, and there's always that cynicism or negativity about I can't do this work because a client has said this, or and I've seen a very different when you share your work or when you speak. I don't see you distinguish the client as somebody else. I mean, most of the stories when I hear or interact, it's where you take ownership and you're working with passion. Even I know a lot of times when you had say pitch projects where even before getting the project you want it, you're so hungry for it, you've traveled, you've gone at your expense, amount of research. I know more also puts in. So, and I want to understand that philosophy with which you guys take on projects, and I know a lot of times you go beyond the brief, and like you were sharing about the visuals, it's really about making sure the client succeeds. And I've seen you switch on to a distinction where you really become friends with the client, and that trust starts to form. I just wanted to speak a little bit about that because there's a lot of value which you can get from that.
Yeah, I think the hunger is honestly, as an individual in the studio, honestly, I don't have many other interests apart from design. So for me, I love practicing it. So as an individual, I don't think I get bothered with that you were paid $100 and you are working for $200, because if you enjoy doing something, like, that's perfectly fine. It's always equating, especially in the early years, we overdid a lot. But it never hurt. You were not doing to impress somebody, simply because we were consciously doing it, because for next client, this will get you more work. And the fact there's no you don't feel any pain while doing extra work, that's great. So the strategy was that. And also amongst us, it was first set of people that we had, none of us were networked or connected or had some friend or relative who could become a client. It's mostly NID folks who came in and helped. Oh, you do that? Why don't you talk to this guy? I think going beyond a brief was never a problem, simply because it has always been 100% design company, as one designer. No, the thing else we have self-taught ourselves. We don't even have an accountant. We have a CA. We see him once in 3-4 months or 6 months. So nobody is there to tell you about your mistakes beforehand, which is nice. The moment you have a very experienced person telling you beforehand, don't do this, I did this in 1967. I said, there's nobody anywhere telling you. So we don't know. So you just end up doing things. The other thing is, you are at certain time in 2012-13, you were competing with studios that were formed a decade or two before you,
Yeah.
with a very with a large portfolio of respectable work of known clients. Now that's a lethal combination. And you are going to do an identity project work of, you have restaurant logos which closed long back. I still remember a presentation where after the after the PDF was over, the client said, do you have any client who is still exists? Because all of the, oh, this client, her shop stopped. This restaurant, it was closed by Delhi government, this. So finally, that guy asked also, like, very curious guys, is there, like, because the Xylus retail also closed, this Levi's also closed eventually. So we had to deal with questions like those, man, when other people pitching for the same project are showing things you can say, look out of the window, that logo is mine. So the only thing you do is you start realizing that it is human nature. People who have been running studios for 20, 30 years, chances are they are going to lose their guard. They will become lazy. They are likely to not travel for a meeting. They will send someone or they will send a PDF. And we started going in person after doing a lot of chats and phone calls. When client insisted, you don't have to come to Bangalore, you don't have to come to Bombay. I have lied, man. I have lied to clients and never lied to a Bangalore client because the bloody airport is, far away. He said, no, you don't have to come. And I said, no, I'm already in Bangalore and I'm sitting in Delhi. And they said, okay, let's meet in the morning. And then how do you reach the damn place in the morning? So somehow, you take midnight flight or whatever that Air India flies, and you make it there and look as if you've been around for a couple of days. So because you wanted to meet somewhere, a lot of projects you got simply because the client ends up saying, oh, I got a very different idea when I just looked at your website. And that's natural. You're reading text and now you're talking to somebody. So very slowly we started scraping off projects which nobody was thinking of giving it to you by spending the kind of money at that time which I could have used in buying or upgrading RAM of my computer. So that's another decision sometimes you take, that you are not buying a new phone, but you just spend that much amount in going to Bangalore to meet a client who you're not sure at all whether you'll get a project or not. And we've done it so many times, these Bombay and Bangalore. As a result, and I'm partially responsible for it, we have more Bangalore and Bombay clients than what we have in Delhi or Gurgaon. We just, travel was never an excuse. And I came to know this for a fact because some of the studios told the client that, no, we will not come, send us the ticket. And that's when I knew they are losing their ground. They are becoming arrogant. And that's when you go full throttle. You don't, I drew my first salary in 2012. Me and Mohar had our first conscious first Sunday break in 2016 July from 2004. And every day we used to come back at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock at home. And next day again leave at 9:30, 10. Continuously, every day for almost 11, 12 years.
Yep.
It was just that you just reach Bangalore and say, I was here last night. You lie, you do whatever because I want to meet you. So it was not easy, but it was fun. I mean, I could have failed also, but what the hell? You went and met some Bangalore friends. End of the day.
Sure. There, one last question before I sort of open it out is now what next? What are the kind of projects you guys are working on? What are you planning for yourself and for the studio?
So, fortunately, this year we were expecting a terrible year, but we're doing fine. We're doing as much work as last year. But I think that it has given you, so I spend less time now on work. Mohar looks after most of uh, uh, getting work done, etc. So I deal with individuals and individual things of projects. Um, like many other things in that, oh, now I will use this time to upskill myself. That hasn't happened. For for studio, I think we want to. I think studio planning is very difficult. It's very people dependent. You know, who you are working with in 2020. So my plan is always is who you are seeking as a colleague. That is your plan as a sum total of all those guys. And of course, what you seek is also a plan. We are looking at people who are sort of who are well read, who are dabbling with not just static part of design, who can expand the horizon beyond the visual look and feel, but also talk about what branding means for us. Like already currently we have bought some courses, our colleagues have bought some courses, so they use their khali time in upskilling themselves, learning new software skills. I think Mohar will be the right person to say what is the plan, because this year has told me that I honestly, a good set of people, we are very less, we are 8 people here and around 8 in Amsterdam. We don't really need to plan that much in advance. We need to plan now for next 6 months, for another couple of 2 years, because that's what needs to be done right now, because we don't know what's coming our way around winters or next early year. But long-term plan is stay in this zone where we are, which is mostly branding, because you know, when you do two-wheeler branding, you come to know so much about the production two-wheeler. You talk to people. When we worked for Tata Motors, I came to know so much about four-wheelers. Wildcraft, you come to know so much about uh, excursions and why people do what they do, cycling and all that. All these different kind of projects, you get a better sense of the world. I think that's for me is a big thing, that these project outputs are one thing, but you keep coming to know more and more about the nuts and bolts of the world, and you get a clearer image. So for my motivation is that. So for next 2 years, I think we are just going to become better at what we are doing.
Sure, no, fantastic. I'm going to, for want of time, I'm going to wrap it up and just sort of put a summary of it. So it's a fantastic journey, and I know we've discussed so many other sections and bylanes which we can get into. The other thing which I don't know, many of you know, and there's a big aspect where Dahiya is a member of the prestigious organization, which is AGI, and it's a big thing to be selected and be part of the AGI, which is Alliances Graphic International. So Dahiya, congrats on that. It's a big thing of making all of us proud and putting us there on the international map. Let's salute this for the Independence Day. I'm going to pass it on. Before I pass it to Sid, who's going to do the word of thanks and summary, Pushi is dying to ask a question. Do you still have the question, Pushi, or?
No, I'm not dying to ask a question. I'm saying when everybody's asking, I also want to ask a question.
Do you feel left out or not?
No, if you are asking me, I'll. So सब लोग कह रहे हैं कि आप बहुत अंग्रेजी में बात कर रहे हैं और बहुत हो गई अंग्रेजी, तो एक हिंदी में सवाल पूछ लेते हैं कि जो डिजाइन की अंतर्राष्ट्रीय प्रासंगिकता है, मतलब which is the international relevance, वो आप इंडियन क्लाइंट्स के साथ कैसे मेंटेन करते हैं?
Khushi is showing off your grammar now, no? This is Lucknow, you're showing off all your...
No, Hindi. I had to ask in Hindi. Say international
Yeah,
relevance of design, because you are dealing with Indian clients, and I also deal with some Indian clients, and I know how sometimes all your preparation and all your presentations and all can go out of the window, and they want to talk about some wedding they went to last weekend, or some Bollywood film that they have seen, and so the whole thing can get very local very fast. मसला ये कि अब इसी एनवायरनमेंट में रह के इंटरनेशनल रेलेवेंस वाला काम भी करना है. वो हाउ डू यू अप्रोच दैट, और आर यू एबल टू मैनेज दैट, और अब क्लाइंट्स नहीं मांगते local flavor or whatever local relevance, they're constantly looking at being international.
I think problem is sometimes they pick up something local and tell us this is what's happening internationally. Those are the things that I get worried about. And you're right, Pushi. It's last wedding mein gaye the kuch dikh gaya tha, or in our case it is always this bloody Google search engine of images. You know, they just they become designers overnight. I think the co-design has two parts. This interval is Royal Enfield. So post-interval, the story became better for us. And also because Royal Enfield's success as a business coincided with the new brand launch. They became known, you know, the share price from $4,500 to $38,000 in 4.5 years is unheard of.
But every client cares for that. Some clients don't even care for it. They say,
no, the other clients, some clients care. I have heard Mr. Mistry, Tata Motors, first meeting, telling Gunther, who's the MD of Tata Motors, these are the guys who did Royal Enfield, their stock market. Sometime, but you keep quiet. If you are assigning that somewhat to us, I'm going to keep quiet. And but I think the attribution of success is because they went for this exercise. That is an attribute because they did the same thing elsewhere in production, in marketing, in retail. So that mentality of getting things right, which you were part of, that gets it. But coming back to your question, it's a project basis thing. We don't have much of local international problems in certain projects like startups, for example, because most of these guys, Sequoia and all these guys, are putting in money so that one day they can go out global. So, you know, so making it global, but the trick is the first 2-3 years of startups are here in India. So we need to find a balance that what is that part of local that has an overlap with international. So there is another project that's coming. I will go live in a month or so for a mobile gaming company where they will go to Germany, UK, and elsewhere in a couple of years. But today they have 50 lakh user base here.
Yeah, I'm going to move now
small town.
Yeah, I'm going to cut you off. It sounds wrong, but I'm going to switch it off to Sid for a conclusion. Kushi will start asking all personal questions. Since I'm bringing issues here.
We still want to see those naked pictures.
Go for it, Sid.
So Sajid, in his usual style, has given me like 10 minutes notice inside your summing up and giving vote of thanks. So excellent organization, Sajid. Nice. No, seriously, this has been incredible. Dahiya, Sajid, everybody who's presented so far, it's been such an infusion of energy in this really sapping time where everybody's so confused. I think MGD has been fantastic. Thanks, Dahiya, for that. A lot of your childhood stories I sense we didn't hear, but your
thank God.
that early immersion and how context comes back. I think it also came up in Sonal Dabral's talk, where we realize that we are connected to our audiences with this really strong bond, and that design culture thing has always been sort of part of our upbringing. That's something that is it's very important to hold on to, because in this Pushy's question is also coming from that place of international ke kide. We will keep chasing all these things that we see, and nowadays without reference, without inspiration, nothing moves. These kids will go straight and Google and imagine they know. Having a search engine is confused with knowledge these days. But what I did want to kind of quickly wrap up. Just the few keywords that I think are really touchstones for design, and they came through your presentation. Things that I'm really grateful for, and the fact that you touched on them, because it's very rarely that we get to hear about the value of listening, the value of localization, of craftsmanship, of going back and iterating again and again and again and trying. That sense of craftsmanship, I think, comes through in everything you've done, whether it's that first Levi's touch, that interactive wall, or the Royal Enfield drawings and artworks that you guys are doing now. That going beyond, expanding the brief and client and in the challenge, these things are just so crucial. Not just ticking the box, not just doing a job, but it really it comes through that with you guys. It's a calling, and it's something that takes you and connects you to places. You give a sense of place. It's not about the simplified international looking brand with standardized colors, but it's about place. It's about getting to know people, getting to know the local smells, colors, all those the sensory disasters that you sometimes encounter, and turning them into gold. So that's something that I'm going to take away from what you've said. I loved what you said about Ivrea, that while it was future facing, it was not something that was trying to solve all the world's problems. It wasn't like it didn't try to guilt trip you into doing something that is massive and wicked, addressing the wicked issues. So that was lovely. I'm going to send you my sketch and my notes, but I just need to really thank you. I've always been a fanboy, and I hope that we will keep getting to see more decos, more co-design projects like Royal Enfield, and
Don't say more decos, man.
More decos would be great, यार. The reprint तो मांगता है.
हाँ, reprint शायद होगा.
Almost
over.
भाई एक और सवाल है कि ये slowly को
mute button for Pushy.
No, Suranjana is right next to him. Suranjana, can you slap him?
अरे पूछ लेने दे भाई. मैं कह रहा हूँ slowly को slowly बोलने से ज्यादा पैसे मिलते हैं क्या?
Of course.
I'm just stopping the live stream on Facebook first. Yeah, live stream stop, recording stop. Now we can all say a good words.